It was just like a few sentences. It was just a nice chunk of a paragraph on my phone. It was just, hey, with all due love and respect, I'm not going to that church anymore. I know that you've been taught to cut me off and blah, blah, blah. But I promise you that I do this for good reasons. And again, like, I love you. And, you sandwich it. Just, I love you. Here's this. I love you. That was a definite weird day. I went through so many drafts of that one little message. And it's just like, just dumb, very vanilla language. It was like, do I use bravery or courage? It just got really, I was
Yes.
scared. I was definitely scared. And I knew the
So
consequences of
scary.
it. And I knew, like, I was like, yeah, when I say this, they're going to really cut me off.
Hey, what's up, guys? Morgan. I've got AJ here from La Luz del Mundo talking with me again. He's an ex-member of this religious cult called La Luz del Mundo that originated in Mexico. And today he is sharing his personal story of how he left this religion that he grew up in. And it is so exciting. There are so many crazy details about his story that I can't wait for him to share. And additionally, I want people to see too that if you've left any high demand religion, there are so many parallels between them all that in hearing AJ's story, I personally feel so validated as an ex-Mormon, realizing like, oh yeah, I'm not the only person that was involved in this kind of organization that told me they had all the answers and they had all the truth, and I'm not allowed to think or question or do anything outside of that box. So AJ, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes. Thank you for
And
having me. Awesome.
absolutely. Thank you for all of your time you devoted to this channel recently. And don't forget to check out AJ's YouTube channel. I'll link it below. He's got some awesome videos talking more about this stuff, and I'm sure he's got lots more awesome content to come as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so AJ, hit us with a little bit of background. Like, let us know if your parents grew up in the church as well as you, or how many generations back, all of that. And then,
Mhm.
if you can, just give us a little bit of information on like what it was like being a member before you doubted it all. Like, were
Mhm.
there things that you liked about it, things that made you feel good, being special and chosen, all of that. And yeah, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just really excited to do this. Hi, everyone. So my name's AJ. I'm 26 now. I'm from Houston, Texas, and basically, from my mom's side, I am the fourth generation to be in this cult. And well, we can start with my parents. My parents grew up in Guadalajara, Mexico, in the neighborhood of the church's headquarters, the Hermosa Provincia, the beautiful province. And if you look up La Luz del Mundo, the big white wedding cake looking church, my parents literally grew up prior to that church being constructed in the 80s. My parents were born in the 70s, and they saw the construction of it in the 80s, and there was just a lot of expansion at the time. And so in their lifetime, the apostle who was in place the whole time was Samuel up until 2014. But yeah, we'll get to that. So yeah, my parents grew up in Mexico in the Colts neighborhood, and in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In the mid to early 90s, my parents moved over to Houston, and they have me. I'm born in Texas, and then there in Houston, there is a church. There is a La Luz del Mundo location, and by the time of 2005, the church expands to a much larger location. They construct their own big church. This is in 2005 in Houston, Texas. La Luz del Mundo also, but that church doesn't look like a big white wedding cake looking thing that spirals up into the sky. It looks like a Greek Roman temple with like very sort of gilded and like kind of fakish gold and columns and marble everywhere, white marble and red marble everywhere. So yeah, that is what I grew up in. Um, I said my name was AJ, but my real name is Abdil Jair. And so within the cult, there is this tradition of naming kids after names in the Bible. So some people get like Daniel, David, um, Pablo, very normal names. But some other people start to look for other weird names within the Bible, like Abdiel. Abdiel only shows up in the Bible once. It's in the Old Testament in First of Chronicles 5:15, and this is a part of the Bible where the writer, whoever it is, mind you, like this is a book dictated by the creator of the universe. At least in that part of the Bible, the writer, or but really God, is just naming lineages of crap. So he's saying like X person, the son of Y, who begot Z, who married X, who married A, whatever. And then at some point Abdil shows up. And so yeah, for me growing up, I was presented, I went through the sort of normal upbringing of any La Luz del Mundo member that grew up in the United States, but it's pretty similar to the upbringing of a lot of other people who grew up in the church in different parts of the world. It's pretty normal. So yeah, I'm born in Houston. Before I turned 40 days years old, before I turned 40 days old, I am presented in front of the church, which I explained in the previous video. And I was presented by Naason's brother, actually, Benjamin Joaquin. And so
Wow.
Benjamin, I think, is the older brother of Naason, but Benjamin also has his own legal troubles. And yeah, I was presented by him, and I think he actually influenced the naming of my sister in like 2 years later. But yeah, I was presented by him. He held me up, he kissed me, and it was weird, like thinking back on it now.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, around, and so then I just grew up in the church. I went to public schools, and I was a pretty just normal B student that behaved well. That was it. I was just very vanilla kid. But growing up in the church, I knew that when prom came around, I couldn't go to prom. By the time I would be 14, I would have to be presented. I would have to be baptized. I would have to go through the revivals. Um,
Right.
I knew that I was gonna, like, it was entrenched into me that I was gonna have to marry someone within the church. You can't marry people outside of the church.
Right.
Um, we attended church very often, like literally, for sure every Sunday, but also definitely multiple times within the week. Um, Sometimes, and so I would also travel to Guadalajara for all the annual pilgrimages
Right.
to the Holy Supper in August. I went to all of the ones that I could, that we were told to go. There's like a few exceptions. There was like a year or two where children were said not to go, and only the wife of the family was supposed to go.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that is my sort of like very like broad upbringing, and I bring that I bring all that up to say that it was really about just I just have a sort of normal vanilla upbringing in the church, and yeah, that's what I'm here to talk about with you all. And then eventually I start to exit. And then, like, long story short, I exit. I mentally exit in like 2014, prior to Samuel's death and around Samuel. And then once like Samuel dies, some sort of things happen there within me that I see and that, began to turn some wheels in my head. And then I was mentally out since then. And then, of course, but through the course of like network of the organization, I kept physically attending up until 2019. And that is when I stopped attending completely. We're almost at the like 2-year anniversary of me not going to church anymore. And so since summer 2019, I've been super duper involved online in terms of just talking trash to the church. Mind you, like very like well articulated and justified like stuff about it, and helping other people get out, connecting people in different parts of the world to each other, and to make themselves not feel alone about this, and just articulating things on YouTube in English for people, digesting the news for people, providing sort of analysis of like events and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll get into that.
Yeah. So
Do you
first
want me to? Mhm.
so this perfect. So then we know kind of where we're going. But first tell me, like, before you started doubting, what did you like about the religion? Or did you, because sometimes as a young boy, you're kind of like, oh, it's annoying, I have to go to church. But like, I mean, what did you
Mhm.
like or maybe not like before you ever started doubting? I'm curious to hear
Mhm.
your
So
perspective.
yeah, so as a little kid, for sure, like church really bore me. Like I was just really bored. And while growing up in church, I attribute them to instilling this really bad habit in me of always picking my nails and always like sort of fidgeting, and just like I couldn't sit still and really just buy into the whole like 2-hour thing that we had to go to every Sunday, on top of all the other like services and whatever.
It's a lot
In
for a
hindsight,
young kid.
yeah. Yeah. And in hindsight, something that I definitely liked about the church was that there was a certain like guaranteed group of friends, a guaranteed group of people that you were going to see for the rest of your life,
Right.
hanging out at this one location. And, maybe some people move or something, but you're at least guaranteed this one like social network and access to them. In hindsight, I also appreciate the fact that I developed some sort of like public speaking skills, because I eventually was instructed to give not sermons, but to give sort of explanations of
Yeah.
doctrine in front of everyone, or to lead people in prayer, lead people in songs that we're supposed to do.
Sure.
Um, So I do appreciate that. Another thing I appreciated was, and that I eventually like started to hate, was like, well, at first I hated it, but like as a kid, I hated dressing up and like wearing a nice tux and like, oh, not a tux, but like a nice little suit and button-up shirt. I hated that as a kid, but eventually I started to like it as a teenager. And then eventually at some point I was like, yeah, I don't want to just dress up for church. Like I want to dress up and go to school randomly one day and look nice. Um, so that's something that I appreciate. But then also, I also, if there's any silver lining to my upbringing, I also appreciate the sort of sensitivity that growing up in a cult like that, growing up in a cult like that gave me a sensitivity towards spirituality and towards like understanding myself as not being some small little ant on this flying rock. You know, I am, you know, I have this sort of I have conscious thoughts. I'm a being that is different from all the other creatures on this planet. You know, I'm a human, and and being human is very hard, and you know, horrific things happen on this planet. And you know, it at least gave me a sensitivity towards like you know, confronting all that and trying to develop some sort of answer, some sort of worldview, some sort of path for myself. It gave me, you know, it gave me a sensitivity to that, but of course, because it's a cult, it tries to like set you on a certain path down it. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for like things that I liked.
Right.
But yeah, for sure, my family was very devout, and we have some extended family members who are really high up in the organization. And we went through all the pilgrimages to the Holy Supper, and at some point, for sure, I started to feel like too different and way too different from those around me, and that's where sort of just the little mustard seeds of doubt start to be placed, and then they eventually grow as years go on.
Right. So I'll just say that I think you pinpointed almost exactly the same things that I would have said that I liked about Mormonism growing up.
Mhm.
The community, right? You have this promised security and safety of these people will be here for you forever. These people have your back. These people you know, are rooting for you, like, and they're your family, you know, like it's not just your parents and your siblings, but it's like it's your congregation family. And so like this religion, it's so much more than just like these ideas, right? It's this promise of safety, it's this promise of security. And the ultimate promise of safety and security, of course, is salvation, right? Which is also promised. And then and that's why when you see these religions, and that's why it's so hard for people to leave these, regardless of what religion it is, because we all want that safety and security. And I think it takes a lot to decide that you don't want that safety and security anymore. It takes a lot of getting self-assured and also confident enough to be able to say, you know, I can be able to do it on my own before I feel comfortable leaving this, you know, this community that was my, you know, my whole world. Anyway, so I just wanted to add that note in for people maybe that are watching this on the outside looking in. So tell us, what do you remember? And I know sometimes like it's been so long, it gets kind of blurry, but what do you remember being some of kind of your first catalyst for starting to kind of doubt the religion and think more critically?
So I'd say, yeah, those are important. And I'd say like maybe early on, I remember at some point I would think to myself, I was like, really? And like, why was I born into this? Like, I'm just this one little kid amongst like a sea of just billions of people on this planet. And I was like, really me? But again, of course, like every time you attend a sermon or whatever, it's like, no, yeah, it's really you. And hey, you better not mess up. And like you described in like another video, that I really liked the sort of point of like, uh, it's even worse for you to doubt because you know better.
You know
And, you know,
better than
the
people
world
that
doesn't know better. The world doesn't know better. They can doubt, but you know better. And oh my God, you especially shouldn't sin. You especially should not doubt. Look at this. Look at us. We get together all the time. Are you really going to tell us that this building is built on like a bunch of BS? Are you really going to tell me that that building over there is built on a bunch of BS and on the gatherings consistently that happen there? So yeah, that happens. Early on, I'm not too sure. So something that is fresh on my mind is that last week. Last week I returned to Houston. And I was hanging out with a dear friend of mine that I met in Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts was cool because we would go on camping trips on Sundays sometimes. And that was a day where I wouldn't go to church. And I noticed myself, I was like, damn, I didn't want to go to church. And at least, and that was a little bit okay, because oh well, AJ's part of this little organization off to the side that is teaching them also nice things. But and if he can sacrifice like a Sunday or two every once in a while, that's kind of okay. But I really loved that
Nice
as a
to
kid.
not go to church, but also not feel guilty not going to church.
Yeah,
right? You're like, oh well, I'm doing something else good. And before you continue, was Boy Scouts encouraged by La Luz del Mundo or no? It was
so I entered Boy Scouts in 4th grade, kind of like me and my parents just wanted to do it. Some dude came to speak at our school, at my elementary school, and I expressed interest in it, and I think I told my parents, and then eventually I got into it. But yeah, I never heard anything like officially from like a pastor or something that said like, don't join these groups because your children's going to be hanging out with Catholics or from around town or stuff. And
I just love that that's the worst thing it could be from.
yeah,
They're going to be
but I
hanging
know,
out with Catholics.
yeah. So that's another like
yeah.
component of La Luz del Mundo's history. There's a very much there's a big element of being adamant towards the Catholic Church, which is the conglomerate in Mexico. So I definitely enjoy like not going to church on Sundays because of Boy Scouts. And then eventually, to sort of answer your question, eventually I know at some point in like my late teens or somewhere, one of the church leaders, local leaders, he wasn't a minister, but he was kind of like in charge of some stuff, like a secretary kind of thing. He had even expressed like ideas to me of like, hey, why don't we start our own Boy Scout group? And it'll be exclusively for church members. And we'll still participate in other like grander regional Boy Scout events, like first aid competitions or like stuff like that with other troops from around town. But how about we start our own troop? Because yeah, it was weird. And I think my Boy Scout troop would have meetings not in the local Catholic church, St. Leo's it was called, but in the building next to it, which also belonged to St. Leo's. But like
right.
But yeah, every Monday when I would have my meetings, I would go to St. Leo's, and I guess I knew a handful of Catholic Boy Scouts there, and I would sort of walk past the Catholic like stuff, and as a little kid, like I recognized that like, yeah, I'm not the only person that goes to a building like this every Sunday and stuff.
Right.
So last week I was hanging out. I went to go visit Houston ever since my last time there was late 2019, and that was my first time back. And because my family has shunned me since then, and I couldn't, obviously see them or anything while I was there. We'll get to that later. But I got to hang out with this one kid that I knew in Boy Scouts who was an atheist, and he was like, let's say like 14, 13. And I just remember like me as a kid meeting him and thinking like, hey, he's pretty cool. He listens to this kind of music. He's kind of funny in this way and this way. And then, at some point he would just say something about the Bible. He's like, yeah, the Bible's trash. It's this and this and this. And then for me, it was like, oh my God, like here's the devil in Boy Scouts. And I was like, and I would think to myself, I wouldn't say it, but I was like, you're just a little kid. I was like, I was like, damn, what would it be like for you to sit in front of, my parents or like the pastor and say what you have to say as like a little kid? So that was someone who sort of planted like early seeds of doubt in me. I didn't recognize it, but like at least exposure to that kind of helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the next significant thing is that once I'm out of high school, I go through the normal indoctrination that happens at the age of 14, which we explained in the previous video of like the presentation when you're 14, the baptism when you're 14, the revivals when you're 14.
Yeah.
The revivals I failed 3-4 times. I don't remember the number, but I failed it that many times over the course of like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And that those were certain moments in myself where I was recognizing that I was like, yeah, I'm not that holy. I have a hard time like focusing on church stuff. When I'm being put through this ordeal of trying to prove my spirituality to God and trying to convince him to make me speak tongues, I was recognizing that I was like, yeah, I'm not really totally buying this. Like, why? well, why is God like so like mean like this? Like, why is he gonna force me to go through this? I was like, why bring me into existence? Those sorts of things would pop into my head.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
Go on.
So check out our other video we did together talking more about the religion itself to hear AJ's amazing story about going through the revivals because it was very intense. Essentially, an overview of it is that tons and tons of sermons and praying until you speak in tongues, and that's how you know that God has entered you, and it's kind of like you're coming of age and joining the church and becoming officially more of a member, and just the emotional intensity around all of that is just so just absurd, especially for people to be going through it over and over again. Because if you fail the revival, if you don't speak in tongues, you have to do it again. People know if you haven't completed it, and they even will like announce your name when you have completed it, and they have this whole show of celebrating you when you have completed. So there's a lot of social pressure to complete the revival, and it's very emotionally exhausting, and it can make you very fearful of the judgment of everyone around you. Tell me
Mhm.
a little bit more about how it made you feel when you would fail those revivals. That must have been
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So basically, I turned 14, and then I was presented, very normally, which is an easy thing to do. And then I think I tried to do the revivals prior to the fall. So the baptisms would happen in the fall. I feel like I tried. I feel like I had a revivals attempt, my first one, prior to being baptized. And so you need both the baptism and the revival to attain salvation. The
Great.
baptism is really easy to do because you just get baptized, you free your sin, and you just go through the little ceremony, and you show your devotion to God and your salvation. But the revivals is required, because if you if you go through the revivals and you don't receive, that means that you are not a son of God. God has not adopted you as his orphan. I'm sorry, he has not adopted you, you spiritual orphan. And so yeah, like I go through the revivals the first time around, and admittedly I wasn't very focused. I was watching TV still, and I was like goofing off at school. But yeah, I failed it.
Being a
And I
normal
remember.
kid,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and I remember when I failed it, a lot of other kids my age that I grew up around with didn't fail it, and they got it right the first time. They got it right the first time, and for me, it immediately like differentiated me from all of them. And then of course, like, I'm pretty sure later that year there's another attempt at revivals. I try it, and I fail again, and I wasn't called up, and it was and but that same day I was baptized. So basically that morning I was baptized, and that's really normal and stuff. Um, so that day I'm baptized, and it's pretty normal and stuff. Um, but then in the afternoon they're going to announce what names of the names of the people who received that week prior. And so that was a weird day for me, because it was like in the morning I was baptized, and it's like, okay, cool, AJ took the next step. Maybe this afternoon they're going to announce that AJ completed that second step he was working on this past week. And then it turns out I didn't do it. And that sort of eats away at you. And again, they remind you, and they're like, hey, by the way, if you die and you haven't received, God literally may not have mercy on you, because you're a spiritual orphan. And it's just really gross. But eventually,
Manipulative.
yeah, but eventually, like my third or fourth try, and by the way, like every single try and the leadings up to the try and in the aftermath of the try, there was just a lot of like sort of lectures that happened within church from the pastor and whatever, but then also like at home with people and with like family members who were like sit you
Trying to give
down
you
and like
advice, right? Like,
put you off to the side and sit you down, and they're like, hey, like, you really got to boil this, you really got to get this down, this and this and this person didn't receive, this person is 60 and they're still trying to receive, do you really want to be that person? And you have to focus on this. And it's just a lot of like a lot of that, and a lot of sort of gaslighting that happens. My last attempt, I do succeed. I'm told, so I'm told. I go through the revivals, and if you had asked me prior to my name being announced that I received, if you had asked me like, "Hey AJ, do you really think that you spoke in tongues?" I would have told you like, "No, I don't think I did, but but I know for sure that this time around I did try the most that I could." So what happens is that my name is actually announced. I was the first person announced for that round of revivals, and my immediate thought was not okay, wow, I'm not an orphan, I'm not, I'm on the path to salvation, blah blah blah, I've completed this step. My first thought was literally like, thank God this is over. Like I don't like this attention on
Right.
me as some sort of like immature spiritual person in the church. And I just don't, I was just really like glad it was over for me.
Oh
um
man, because all of that
yeah.
pressure finally, like everyone's gonna get off your back a little bit because now you did the revival
I've
successfully.
I've
That's
I've yeah.
crazy. And you think your concern would be more like, oh yeah, finally I'm saved. But like no, like you were just like, I'm so done with this. By the time you failed 3 or 4 times, it's like it's a very exhausting process. So that's so crazy. So like that makes sense to me that in the back of your mind that could have been kind of a moment of like, wait a second, uh,
Yeah, so in my head, I could have thought like, I just tricked all these people. I didn't intentionally try to trick them. Other people have
right,
reported that they have successfully tricked pastors that come and listen to you to see if you're speaking in tongues. Some people have reported that, but and in my head, it wasn't that I was trying to trick anyone, but in my head, it was like, okay, I'll put in a certain amount of effort, but very personally, which I know if I spoke in tongues or whatever, I don't think I did. I don't feel like any sort of transformation within myself.
right,
Um,
right,
it wasn't. I didn't feel a if you know moment. It was like, no, I went through the ordeal. I might fail again. I might not get announced, but then I get called and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Like I don't even care if it happened or not. It was just like I'm just so happy that it's over with. I don't have to go through this anymore.
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. So tell me the next thing you remember that was kind of like
Hmm.
um uh causing you to doubt or question
Hmm.
more
So
intensely.
this revival bit that we're talking about is like 2009, 2011, somewhere there. The next real significant thing that happens is towards the tail end of 2014 when Samuel is very ill, and the whole focus on church is just like pray for Samuel all the time, and
And that
we're
was
gonna have
the
24.
apostle at the time. The
Yeah,
top dog was the
yeah.
apostle, and he was very sick at the time. So just clarifying. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he was in place from 1964 to 2014, so 50 years of reigning, and basically he was sick in those last years, but for sure in those last months. And the church, obviously, the ministers or whatever, they weren't explaining what exactly was wrong with him, but
Right.
just that God was deciding to inflict this on him, and because God is deciding to inflict this on him, God is trying to call us to attention and make sure that we better have our shit together, because the apocalypse may come right now,
Right.
and
Right.
the end times may come right now. Like that was the thing. So uh I just remember being an undergrad, and I think it was the start of my second year in undergrad, and like feeling myself like really sort of bounce between just a lot of interesting contexts, where I was going to college and I was just learning a bunch of things in rooms full of like 500 people, and it wasn't church, and I was just like, these people are here like educating themselves, and they come from all over the planet,
Right.
and this isn't like high school. This is just a different like learning environment, and the professors have tenure, and guess what? They're just gonna say whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
It's not
Right.
like they're shackled to a textbook that came from some committee somewhere.
The
These are
Catholic
people that
Church
are,
paid them.
yeah, yeah. These are people that are like actually like really educated people who have distinguished themselves in the world and have earned this spot as professors, um, to speak to the young minds of a gigantic group of people day in and day out. That
Right.
really like spoke to me, and so I found myself like in weird contexts where I was doing that and just feeling like really open to a lot of things, but then also being really um siloed into this one like weird church, and like on like the side of the freeway that looked like a Roman temple, where we were praying for some like sick old Mexican man way over here
Right.
who was said to have magic powers and whatever, but he's still sick. And it's just like, it was like, can he do something about it? Well, can it was just a lot. So for sure a lot happened there. He dies in early December 7th, 2019. 2019, no, December 2014, sorry. He dies there. And I remember when he dies, everyone makes immediate plans to go to Guadalajara to go honor his body, to go like pray and whatever, for some sort of funeral. And while I'm there, I don't remember too much of when I was there, but the feeling in the air was one of dread, where it's like, wow, the God's man on earth is dead. Does this mean there are no keys to heaven? Does this mean that we're all shut out of this? It's really traumatic, and it's a lot of thoughts went through a lot of different people's heads while they were in the Hermosa Provincia, in the beautiful province, that week. But I know that I eventually got to see that man's body. There were lines and lines to go. They put his body in the middle of the big white wedding cake church right in the center. Right. And there was lines and lines of hours of waiting, of people going at all hours of the day to go and just walk past it, look at his body and go and pray or something like that. It was just really, it was weird. Yeah. I got to see his body for sure. But one thing that happened on our way to Guadalajara is that my family, we lived in Texas. We drove up to the border, and then up at the border, we just took a bus. And it was this was just the quickest way that we could get there, and the bus was going to travel overnight. One of the things that happened on the bus is that we saw an accident on the street. We weren't involved in it, but we saw an accident where a woman and her son or her grandkid or something like that were hit by a big vehicle, and they immediately died. And I literally saw that right in front of my eyes. That was the first time I had ever seen something like that. I saw I heard the noise, and I instantly saw what it was. And that was really difficult because we were just already going through this whole spiritual mishmash of stuff in our head regarding the death of the apostle. And then me on my way to go, hang out, to go view his body and go focus with this community around what just happened around this, this other thing happens to them. And so then, I'm in Mexico, and I'm thinking, I was like, well, that's kind of unfair. Have those people heard of the apostle? Right. And I was like, is God just being really shitty to us like that? The way my parents took it, and the way they explained it to my family, and the way that my family spoke about it was no, that was the devil trying to scare us, trying to scare us into getting out of it, into making us doubt or whatever. Or maybe it was a sign from God that he was trying to show us that hey, this is a moment of reckoning. You better buckle down, because that could have been you. Something it was really gross and just ugly. But yeah, before Samuel's death, and for sure around Samuel's death, I was exiting mentally so much. Right. And it just became a matter of time of just finding certain thinkers and certain writers to read, not that didn't know exactly about my church, but that spoke about religion at large. And right. It was just a matter of time for me to keep going to my classes and focusing on school, staying away from church because it was really boring. But then on the side, I was also no, I want to listen to certain people, help me dismantle these ideas that my church was really hammered into me over the years. And and then also on the sort of university campus, I would meet people from other religions, and and then I think to myself, I was like, this dude comes from X part of the world, and he's basically like me, or he could have been, or I could have been him, where I'm where I could have been super adamant about this one little corner that I come from, and the story that I grew up in, entrenched in. At some point, just I recognized in undergrad, I was like, I can't be this stupid. My world cannot be this small. Right. It is possible for my parents to be wrong. It is possible for a lot of people, for the hundreds of people that I grew up with, to be wrong, and to have just bad ideas in their head. I don't know. I was just really grateful that I somehow really liked school, stayed in it, and then got a little too curious, and the curiosity started to eat away at this set path that everyone had me on.
It just kind of snowballed, right? So tell me about when, unless there's anything else relevant to share, when you got to that point where you were like, I don't want to be a part of this, but you had to stay in for a while, for your family and everything, what emotions you were going through and how you tried to handle that situation. Because I'm like, that's so hard. That's so hard. I know it was so hard for me. Like you have to fake it at first.
Yeah, it was just a lot of faking. Just put up a facade. You know, when you're on this side of town at the university, you can do whatever you want, and you're going between classes, and
Yes.
you know, you're pretty much out of like supervision from local church members or something like that. You know, because church members didn't live in that side of the neighborhood, and I don't think any other church member went to that school. But
right.
but hey, at the end of the day, you're going to commute back to your community, and you're going to go to this, and you're going to check in here, and you're going to look like a nice kid. Yeah, it was really, it wasn't nice. There was a lot of compartmentalization of who I was, and putting up different fronts for different people. And then at the same time I was working, and so it was like that's also a sort of constraint on your energy and your ability to have free time and think for yourself and explore and sort of go out and explore yourself in different social contexts outside of church. A curfew and all that crap. And then I eventually I graduate undergrad in 2018 with 2 degrees, and it was really nice because it was just like, wow, like I'm done with this. My next step is to go to graduate school, and I go to graduate school at this school that I'm already at, but actually there's a better school elsewhere. But the thing is that school is going to be X amount of hours away from the nearest church. And so because of my obligations and whatnot, like it's like I'm only going to be able to go once a week on the Sunday, and I'm going to waste a lot of time driving back and forth. And it wasn't nice, but just one way or another, I happened to survive those years of undergrad of just like putting up a facade and stuff. I happened to survive it. And now it's one where it's like, no, my time is mine, and I have my own ideas, my own sort of spiritual or just grander ideas of who I am in this world and what to do with other people. So late 2018 to 2019, that school year was my first year of undergrad over here in Pennsylvania. And then for that first summer after my first year of graduate school, hold on. So 2018 to 2019, that was my first year of graduate school. And then that summer, I returned back to, it was May, you know, the semester was over, my first year was over, and I was going to return back to Houston and go hang out in Houston and do research and hang out with my family and read books and, you know, do my stuff while on the break. But my mom was like, no, you should, it's May, you should go to Guadalajara to go celebrate Naason's birthday. And so I did go, and I saw Naason like a month before his arrest. And I went not because I wanted to see Naason and hang out in church stuff. I went because I wanted to see my family and hang out and eat good food and stuff. So then I returned home, and then I'm there a couple weeks. And then in early June, this whole thing breaks out. And that was a very interesting day. June 4th, Tuesday, was when the church found out. That was when the bishops like announced like, hey, our dude is arrested. But he was really arrested Monday, June 3rd, 2019. So the Tuesday, I wake up at 5 a.m. so I can go to church because I just wanted to get it out of the way, because I knew at the end of the day, my parents were going to be like, hey, go to church in the afternoon. Hey, go to church. But for me, I woke up that day. I went at 5 a.m. just to get it out of the way. I probably went home, took a nap. Then I either read books all day long, you know, because that's just, you know, that's what I wanted to do for homework. Or I went to school and I did research or something. But basically, it was Tuesday afternoon. My folks were like, hey, let's go to church. And I said, nope, I went this morning. I just want to hang out and read books. And they said, okay, I guess that's fair. Because you went today, we get it, right? But then we get a text, and we get a random text from the bishops, or, you know, the network, and they're like, hey, everyone, there's an emergency meeting at church, go. And I didn't know that it was an emergency meeting for everyone all over the world. I didn't know that. Right. It was just, I thought it was just for us in Houston. So my idea in going was, well, first I was like sitting outside and reading, and I remember the exact thing I was reading and what I thought when I read this text. My first thought was like, oh, well, I guess Naason's visiting Houston like in a couple of days, and they're gathering us together so that we can decorate and like get a red carpet, and like a lot of like that happens, a bunch of crap like that.
Right.
My dad picks me up and he drives me to church, and on the way there he tells me, he's like, yeah, so the apostle, do you know why we're going? I was like, no, what's up? I don't know, is he visiting or what, like, is there like a special event? I don't know what. He says, yeah, he was arrested in Los Angeles on some charges. He didn't specify what, or I think he probably did specify, but then I'm sitting in front of but then, I'm in church, and then I'm sitting in front of this TV, like right in front, and the church is full. Everyone's going to get the same little 5-minute message. I'm not too sure how long it was. It was just something small.
Sure, sure.
And it's the bishops, and they're saying like, peace of the Lord to everyone. We're here to announce that the apostle was arrested in Los Angeles. You're not to read the news. We are your only source of information. And for the next 24 hours, or until he is released, it was worded as that. He's like, until he's released, we're going to have a 24-hour prayer, which means that like every hour, there was going to be a little prayer, a little singing and prayer for like 15, 20 minutes, every hour throughout the night.
Wow.
And they said, so that little message was kind of short. And then I believe the local like pastor gets up to the podium. And he's like, well, you heard them, you and everyone, sign up with these two people here. They have the clipboards, and we're gonna set up a little like schedule for everyone.
Wow.
Just crap like that. So then eventually I get home. We're outside of church that right after that message, and I tell my parents, I'm like, hey, can I take the car home? I take the car home. I'm the first person home. I have some privacy. I immediately like start reading everything. I start Googling something like Naason Joaquin arrested, and then I read the 26-page report from Javier Becerra, the Attorney General of California at the time, and and it has like the prosecutors' names and whatnot, and it's explaining things, and it's telling the names of the co-defendants, and then I start to read like the AP, the Associated Press, has its like own little story, and it's just like a very vanilla, just here are the facts. This dude's arrested, and then I was like, oh, this is weird. Like I've never seen this dude have so much media attention on him. And
are you thinking at the time, because you're already kind of mentally out, right? So are you thinking at the time like he might be innocent, or are you like thinking, oh no, he probably is a bad dude and my parents need to know about this? Or what are you kind of thinking?
My first thought was like, I was like, yeah, so why was he arrested? And I go home and I read, and it's like, oh, my first thought was like, oh, he's from Mexico. Was this some sort of passport issue, some sort of something?
Right.
But maybe the government's trying to blow it up into something more. But no, like, well, actually, not even is the government trying to blow it up into something more. That was never part of my thinking. But I was like, yeah, this is some sort of immigration thing, or right, he brought. Right. I don't know. He brought a pocket knife onto the plane or something. Like, I don't know.
Right. Something that could be explained.
Yeah, something easy, but no, it was something of that grave extreme. And I immediately, when reading, I was very calm. I don't remember what I thought, but I was just absorbing it and thinking like, yeah, something's happening here. And so eventually I also discover the Ex-LLDM subreddit that night. And I just keep reading. Mm-hmm.
Before we keep going, just if people haven't watched the other videos, at the time in 2019 of Naason's arrest, it was 26 accounts of human trafficking, sex trafficking, child pornography, production of child pornography, rape, like just horrific, like literally like the worst things you could be charged with possible. Okay, so you got on the subreddit. Keep going.
I just got on the subreddit. I started reading all the hot posts. I would read the new ones. I would filter by like the most the post with the most engagement ever since the inception of the subreddit, since February 2017 is I think when it started. But I just started reading a lot, and I started and people are out, and I saw people like were posting anonymous. People had sort of little aliases that they were putting. People were talking about certain things, and I was like, hey, that sort of little ceremony or bit of theology is pretty crappy. I was like, yeah, I felt that too. I would read for a week or two and just sort of stay silent and just keep going to church that summer. And then around late June is when I started posting, and that's when I was just like I started to develop my own little voice there. And not to brag or anything, but of all the people on the Ex-LLDM subreddit, I have the highest karma. it's gigantic, and karma being like the sort of engagement, likes, and
Right. So you've been
likes and
commenting
engagement.
a lot, helping, posting a lot, like really
Yeah.
supporting and helping people in that subreddit.
So on one end, I do say that to like show off, where it was like, I'm a pretty smart kid, and I get to talk trash in this really cool way. But on another end, like I actually really mean that to point out that like, the subreddit became really important for me in terms of
Yeah.
just recognizing that I wasn't alone, and and then there were times, afterwards where I would go to church and I would look at the crowd and I was like, damn, there has to be someone in here who also goes to that subreddit. Like there has to be. Who the heck is it? Do they even know it would be me? Um,
Right.
yeah, so that was really important for me. I engaged a lot there. There was news being shared there, sort of discussions being had. Sometimes there's like a little fun like side conversation where people sort of vent about little funny things that they remember thinking when they grew up, and
Sure, sure.
it made me feel less alone. So
Right.
yeah, long story short, I'm there all summer, and I'm seeing things happen. And off to the side, when I have privacy, I'm on the subreddit posting things. And um, in those early in those early months, I would lie a little bit, or at least mislead a little bit in my posts. Not to say that I was making crap up. I was saying things like
Right.
I was sometimes I would post in Spanish to make it seem like I lived in Mexico. Sometimes I would say
Oh,
I
right.
have multiple siblings, multiple women siblings, but really, I don't. And then, just to make it, just to obscure myself a little bit.
Right,
Um,
right. And
and
for what
Mhm.
purpose was that? Or
Because
what?
there were actual goons who would go there to try to figure people out, or there were goons who would show up, read things, make their own account, and then try to talk to the newer members of the subreddit in order to get them to reveal what their identity is, stuff like that.
So they were
So
trying to, so there's kind of like infiltration happening in the subreddit,
yeah,
right?
yeah, there
And
is. I haven't seen too much of it lately, but still, like we're always careful to remind people that this has happened
yeah,
before, and
right.
be careful, watch your back.
And what's their goal in infiltration? Like trying to convert people back, but are they trying to out members to their families or
Out
like,
members to their families.
oh
Uh,
gosh,
yeah.
that's
So
so awful.
let me get to how I was outed.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
go
really
ahead, go ahead.
excited. So that's the summer of 2019. In August, I returned back to school, so I'm far from my family. I do see the last time I went to church was August 14th, 2019, and that's when I saw Adoraim, the son of Naason, try to give his own little attempt at running the Holy Supper that year. I saw that was my last day. A few days later, I text my family and I tell them, I was like, "Hey, with all due love and respect," it was just like a few sentences. It was just a nice chunk of a paragraph on my phone. It was just, "Hey, with all due love and respect, I'm not going to that church anymore. Um, um, I know that you've been taught to cut me off and blah blah blah, but I promise you that I do this for good reasons." And then I also, the last sort of thing that I said was like, I'm not going to answer any messages for like a day. So if you want to say anything, you can say it, but I'm not going to touch it for this amount of time. I want you to sit with this. And again, like, I love you. You sandwich it. Just, I love you. Here's this. I love you. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I sent that, and I stopped going to church. I didn't go to church that Sunday. I just hung out at school and did my thing. And then, obviously my family would try to send me messages and like, but no, by that point, they only knew that I stopped going. That's all they knew. And
Right.
so
And
their approach to that was,
were you, before you keep going, were you afraid of their reaction? Like, were you scared to see
yeah,
what was gonna
definitely,
happen?
definitely. That was a definite weird day. I went through so many drafts of that one little message, and it's just like just dumb, very vanilla language. But it was just like, no, I want to use brave. It was like, do I use bravery or courage? It just got really. I
Yes.
was scared. I was definitely scared, and I
It's
knew the
so
consequences of
scary.
it. And I knew like I was like, yeah, when I say this, they're gonna really cut me off. But they actually didn't cut me off. They spoke to me, but way less often. And of course, when they did speak to me, it wasn't through phone calls. It was just a bunch of text messages, and it was just like, "Hey, hope you're doing well. This and this. Please read this. Look, here's this Bible verse. Here's this picture. Here's this
Right,
thing of Bible verses that you can read." Um, so August 2019, all they know is that I stopped going.
right.
And so I leave it like that. And then by the time it's like winter 2019, they started asking, he was like, are you going to come over to hang out with us? And it was weird because I had to negotiate it with him. I was like, well, you guys know I don't go to church. I'm happy to go and spend Christmas with you, but one stipulation: don't you dare mention anything about church to me. Now, mind you, I wasn't going to say, I didn't say that I was like a critic yet, or that I was whatever, but I just told him that I was like, I will hang out with you. I'm a part of this family, and it would be totally normal and fun and stuff, but don't you dare like invite me to church or tell me anything about it. And so I
Right.
went and I hung out with them for like a week, and they stuck to it. But of course, like prior to me leaving, it was my last day on the way to the airport and stuff. They were saying things like, hey, just got church and this and this and this and this.
Right.
Um,
Right. That's so
yeah, it was gross. So fast forward to early March 2020. In mid-February, I meet a local journalist who's a student here at Penn State, and she works with the Daily Collegian, which is just a small university newspaper. Um,
right.
and we meet, and then she sort of she learns about this like cult thing, and she's like, cool, can we write a story about this? And I said yes, but here's how we're gonna do it. Don't show my face. You can show a silhouette of my face. Don't give identifying information about me, too much of it. We only get left certain bits of it in the story, and I can send a link to this and you can read it for yourself.
Great.
But I also said, like, yeah, don't call me AJ, my name is Alex, and this and this. So yeah, we do an interview that's recorded, and then she types something up and then sends me, I don't know if she sends me a draft. I don't think she sent me a draft of it, but she understood the stipulations that I had. And
Right.
then this thing, so there were three purposes for me doing it. One, I wanted other people on the campus, if they were going to read the story, I wanted other people on the campus to recognize that, yeah, I'm not the only person in the cult. This person's in a cult also. I
Right.
can reach out to Alex, me, through the journalist. And that's one reason I did it. A second reason I did it was like, I just wanted more public like attention on the case. I just
Right.
loved, like, I wanted more, if people were interested in this stuff, they could read the story and learn about this cult. And I think my
Right.
third reason was, it was also like a trap to La Luz del Mundo members in this way. So it's a silhouette of my face, and you can't really tell it's me, obviously. If you knew me and then you read that thing, you would know it was me. But if you read that thing and you
Right.
didn't know it was me, and you don't know me, then, like, you wouldn't know it was me.
Right.
So this thing drops, this story, and we can link it again. It drops on the last Friday of February, so maybe the 28th or something of 2020. And then that was a Friday. It drops around like midday. I read it and I'm like, damn, there it goes. That's really cool. I'm probably I didn't think that people would latch onto it so quickly. But
Right.
by the next Tuesday, so just a handful of days later, I speak to one of my parents. One of my parents like calls me, and they're like, hey, no, they said, they sent a text. They said, hey, call me when you have a chance. And I called them. I say, what's up? And they're like, hey, were you speaking to the local newspaper or something about it? And I was like, yep, that's me. And they're like, you can't do that. Can you please stop doing that? And I was like, no, this and this and this. And they told you not to read information, and they're telling you to cut people off like me. And I was like, I'm sorry, but like, I know too much, and you've been told not to know anything at all. And I have to do what I have to do. I'm too smart to like be stuck in this stupid thing.
Right.
And I'm too smart to be stuck in this stupid thing. And I'm too like compassionate and understanding to let other people like be stuck in this thing, especially like
Right.
my family. So that conversation doesn't last really long. It's like 20 minutes. It's pretty like devastating to like play back in my head. But
Yeah.
yeah, the last words that I told this person was like, I am not stopping. I said it like 3 times. I was like, I'm not stopping. And to my credit, the whole time that I was on the phone, my voice was like low. It was just normal, just
Right.
just really boring. There's no screaming, no raising the voice,
Right.
no calling people names or anything. It was just like, hey, yeah, you found my guns, so to speak, and I'm sorry, I'm sticking to them. Deal with it. And so the way they dealt with it was like, I got kicked off the phone plan. No one called me for months from my family, my
Oh,
direct family, not until like, I'm actually not gonna get into that, but
yeah.
for absolute months, they actually have not spoken to me. And up until the present day, well over a year, just about like is it a year and a half? Almost a year and a half. They've not spoken to me. at all.
So
But
sad.
so here's the interesting thing though. It's like I had a post on the subreddit in February 2020 that I called Operation Trojan Horse, which is basically like, hey, so you people here on the subreddit, I have an idea. How about you just get little pieces of paper, write the URL to the subreddit, to the XL, reddit.com/x/r/ex-LLDM. How about you get those little papers, fold them, and then just leave them like on the bench, or go to the bathroom and in the middle of church, go, do your junk, and then leave a little piece of paper there. Someone else is gonna find it, and they're gonna think like, oh my God, someone in this church is like trying to like is a dissenter. And other ideas was like, and I wasn't telling people to do graffiti or nothing like that. I was just like, just leave little pieces of paper, leave it in the little pocket behind the bench, leave it on someone's car, maybe. Just do that to sort of, at least wake someone up. That's what I called it, Operation Trojan Horse. Of course, there are people on the subreddit that there are people that visit the subreddit that belong to the church, and they just read things there to like to just sort of see what we're up to and what we're thinking about. Someone read Operation Trojan Horse prior to it happening on a certain Sunday in February. I think it was February. And on their Facebook page, sort of defending the apostle and whatever, they're like, by the way, the bitter apostles are planning to leave little pieces of paper. So if you see them, throw them away or don't even open them. Be careful of what little trash you're picking up around church, stuff like that.
Oh my
gosh. Yeah. So like that happened.
Blowing up. Yeah.
I had a couple people who belonged to that group of that one or two Facebook groups, and they would send it to, and they would take a screenshot and send it to my account. They're like, hey, by the way, you have this little thing happening. But this group over here knows what you're doing. So I set that up from the money store account on Reddit. That is on. I put that on Reddit, and if people who follow Ex-LLDM and try to track people down will know this. This is how they got to me. They got to me through, okay, there's the money store account on Reddit that has set up this Operation Trojan Horse thing.
Right.
Then there's this random story in the Daily Collegian that shows up on Google News or something, on Google News that. And then if you read the little article, this person's anonymous. Oh, but they claim that they did Operation Trojan Horse. So it's basically
and then some people knew you from.
And then some people knew me.
And it all came to a front. Oh my God.
Yeah. So these things triangulate, and for me, again, like my Daily Collegian story was, it was just with the local little university newspaper. I wasn't talking to the New York Times. I wasn't talking to like Ronan Farrow and the New Yorker. I wasn't talking to the Atlantic. I was talking just a small little newspaper in the middle of Pennsylvania at a school where no La Luz del Mundo members go to, at Penn State. And of course, like the only way that anyone's gonna, this story was ostensibly only supposed to be found by people within the school who read the paper. But if you're someone who's tasked with finding people out and trying to like criticize all the journalists and keep track of all the bad news stories that come out about your church, you're going to stumble upon this story on like Google News. If you put, I tested it, if you put La Luz del Mundo on Google News, sort by recent, and you'll find it. Like that's how they would find it, I'm pretty sure. And then of course it's like, well, someone just put the time in to read this thing, gather the details, think of like all the directions, and try to triangulate to see who found out. So the story dropped on a Friday, and then by the Tuesday was my family told me. They're like, hey, we've been told, they didn't tell me who, but hey, we've been told that you're talking trash, etc. And yeah, that for me, like when that happened, that immediately like confirmed for me that like, wow, there are really people out there who are trying to out dissenters, who are really trying to like find out the identities of people online. And these are just people online like me who are just talking about bad experiences and criticizing the church and so on. We aren't actual victims in like the criminal case, but nevertheless, like they still have time to come and look for us. I can only imagine how much more difficult it has been for like the Jane Does and the John Does who are involved in the current criminal case, who, are trying to be like found out and sniffed out. So yeah, that story happens. I have that conversation with my family. It's at that point that they completely cut me off, and it was weird because in coronavirus happens, and it's just like, wow, like they're really not reaching out to me, like to ask me if I'm okay, because I'm like 3 hours away from New York. I'm in the backyard of this like coronavirus like hotspot.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and then it was eventually like my birthday, and it was like, wow, these people really aren't reaching out to me. And then it was like a sort of graduation from my master's, and I didn't walk or anything, but they knew that at some point I was going to get my master's at some point, and they just
Right.
didn't reach out. And so that's basically what's been the case in terms of my personal relationship to them since then. But like again, but even like apart from that, I think one of the most important things that happens and that keeps me driving is that I get to help other people like get out of this organization. Like I get to consume the news in a certain way and digest it, and I'm training to be a historian, so I have some sort of writing skills, and like I get to speak and talk about these things, articulate them in a certain way for other people to digest, and like ideally have some dominoes like fall in their head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so basically since then it's for me it's been contact with journalists, contact with other people within the organization, setting up things, doing interviews where I show my face and show my like name, and like hopefully hopefully that channels, hopefully that spreads in the way gossip spreads, but through that network of like gossip, maybe it'll like spark something up in certain people.
Right.
um
Right.
yeah, that's basically what it's come down to. And I don't know. I really wouldn't have it any other way. I feel very lucky to have been able to get out of the organization at this nice, like young age. And mind you, it still robbed me of a lot, but it didn't rob me so much as it has other people. Like some people are literally, like just elderly, and they've just been stuck in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. We just have to. We like no matter let's pretend and fantasize that Naason is not going to be convicted, that he gets off on some other technicality, some sort of other crap that happens.
Right.
um like no matter what, like even right now while the iron is still hot, like people like myself and other folks just have to keep hammering at it, just keep hammering at it,
Right.
um
Right.
to get more people out, and just try to create that sort of I am Spartacus moment, wherever we can.
That's amazing. That is, oh my gosh, that is insane how that all played out with the Reddit and everything. I'm just like, holy,
Yeah,
oh my God. Okay, so I had a couple thoughts I want to share, and one thing I want to say is thank you for having the bravery to come out and put your face out there and say this is who I am, and this is what this is how I feel, and it's so hard to do that, and a lot of people looking from the outside might not get how hard it is, but like I feel like it was really hard for me as a Mormon, but it's just that much harder for a La Luz del Mundo ex-member because like it's just a much more strict shunning policy, and the members are almost kind of just a little bit more aggressive toward ex-members than you
hmm
see like with Mormonism, and so there's just that much more pressure that's put on you when you're speaking out about these things, that people can reach out to you and say or try to do terrible things when you're trying to take a stand like this, and they can do it with this righteous indignation that them trying to tear you down is rightfully so, because here you are taking down the Lord's apostle, the most precious man on earth. So I totally commend you for that and for all of your service toward the ex-LLDM community. um yeah, I think, personally, I've really enjoyed hearing your story because it's just another reminder that, like, I'm not alone, right? That I'm not the only one that grew up with this religious framework that I didn't totally feel one with. And I did feel one with it for a long time, but then I came to a point in my life where I was like, this just doesn't feel right anymore. And I'm not the only one, and it's not me that's necessarily the problem. Um, so tell me, if you have any closing thoughts. I would also really love to hear if you have any advice to anyone who maybe is on the fence about leaving their high demand religion. If you have
yeah,
any advice to them and any other closing thoughts, thank you so much
yeah,
for
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 sure.
everything today.
So it's Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been it. We've talked a lot today, and it's just freaking awesome. And I just hope this is like really helpful for other folks because we live in the 21st century, and like we just can't have our worlds like be this small and dumb in the way that certain people try to hammer it into us. Um, my sort of advice to anybody who's like sort of on the fence about certain things or like are trying to or maybe questioning beginning to question their own sort of religious context and so on, it's I'd advise you to just keep investigating and just don't take like these easy answers that people can try to provide you. I in my experiences with religious dogmatism and the way that I've experienced it has led me to the point where I've kind of basically like abandoned. I've literally like abandoned all religious faith. I consider myself a non-believer, an atheist. Whatever term you have. Um, and mind you, that's really difficult because religions are put on this earth, not put on this earth. Sorry, that makes it sound like there's a God. But religion, religions answer certain things for people, and it basically kind of boils down to two like really important questions. One is like the question of, okay, I'm born, I'm conscious, I didn't choose to be conscious, I'm just like here, I'm gonna be here for some amount of time. What does this mean? Where do I come from? Like that's a gigantic question.
Yeah.
That's just the driving question behind so many things. And then the second question that religions try to provide answers for is, okay, well, I'm here, I'm conscious, I'm alive, I'm going to be here for a set amount of time, I'm going to die. I've seen other people die and their bodies go away and their voice is gone and like their presence is gone, and like what happens, that's coming from me too. What happens? Those things are scary, and honestly, like the universe, this is kind of like harsh to say, but the universe is just doing its thing. The things just happen, and it's under no obligation to like make sense to you at all. If anything, like you have an obligation to yourself to try to make sense of it for sure. But one of the ways that I think one of the just most like important ways that like humanity can make sense of everything happening around itself right now is to get rid of the easy ways that humanity has tried to make sense of it all. Like these ideas that we have about holy books from like thousands of years ago, like we just can't like right now in the 21st century, we can't like anchor ourselves to conversations about the universe in the way that they were being had way back then. Or even like in the way that Joseph Smith was trying to have them years ago, or even in the way that like Eusebio was like trying to sell, back like almost a century ago. Like we just can't we just can't like submit to that. The world is gigantic, and it's incredibly scary, and like horrific things happen, and bad people like literally get away scot-free their whole lives for so many things, and so many bad things happen to very innocent and good people. That absolutely, but we just can't concede to these like very small bubbles. Like we just can't. There's this really cool quote by Confucius that I love. It's we have two lives. The second one begins when you realize that you actually only have one. And so like what it is for me, it's been like, just are you really going to bog yourself down in that one religion that you were born into? Why don't you like really challenge it, even if it's scary? Challenge it, just even for the sake, frame it as like you doing it for the sake of really like solidifying why you believe in it, and be open to the fact that eventually you may find something that completely disturbs you, but that should not eat away at why you're trying to do this for yourself and for your family, and just for yourself. um Another thing I'd say is, I'm not sure, but just have that, like just have like that tenacity. People will love it, and people will recognize it in you, and it gets and as lonely as like it can be, and the consequences that come from it, like there is some sort of peace that you at least get to live in your head, that there's a sort of like peace of mind that you get to have in your head the rest of your life, where you're thinking like, well, at the very least I feel like I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah.
And like we just can't fold to like to bad ideas, and like treat going back to like the quote from the other video. It's like please like treat yourself with dignity. Like you deserve dignity. You are not your thoughts. And so when the thoughts come in, do they threaten your dignity? how do you, how do the thoughts and the ideas threaten your dignity? How do you test them? Well, you test them with scrutiny. Like just put them up to the fire and just see how things play out, and just like meet people from like all over the world and recognize that you are just one drop in the bucket of like 7 billion people on this earth, and you're one of like 100 billion people who have walked this planet over the history of the world. It's just it's like, even if it's scary and if it doesn't make sense to you, like at least just recognize those things and just live with them. That'll bring like a lot to you. There's probably a lot more I can say, but I'm kind of scrambled in my head now.
Oh, it's all good. We've been talking for a long time. AJ, thank you so much. I wanted to comment on just a couple things and then we'll shut this down. But like you said, it's like when you're looking into these things, maybe looking into the background of your church or whatever, or what the media says, one thing you got to realize is that you might be afraid to do so, because you might find information that you really don't like or that really upsets you. But ultimately, truth is truth. And whether you know about that information or not is your choice, right? You can choose to, research about Naason and learn about all of these accusations and all of that. Or you can choose to remain ignorant. But the truth is out there, whether you are willing to look at it or not. And ultimately, I don't think we should be afraid of truth. I think that we should be open to truth, because whether you like the truth or not, it just is. And so if you can, have that kind of perspective, it can really help you. And one more thing I'll say too is that like AJ said, you're one drop on this planet, and your whole experience of life, your perspective has been shaped by the people and the community that raised you. And that not everything you were taught could possibly be true. It just statistically is not possible. And so it's okay to question the things that you were taught growing up, whether it's religious or not, whether it's, how to parent or how to be a spouse or how to be a woman or whatever. Like, it's okay to question the things you grew up with. And it's actually vitally important for us to move forward as a society. Because if we don't question, we're always just going to be hashing the same problems over and over again. So thank you, AJ, so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Awesome.
Oh my God. This is just like, just so much richness in all of these videos. I cannot wait to post these videos. Thank you to everyone who watched this. Please comment down below your thoughts about these videos that we've done. If you'd like me to do a live Q&A with AJ, comment down below and we could set that up. That would be super amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
And hit the subscribe button, because I really do want to have AJ back as the trial begins for Naason toward the end of September, unless it gets pushed back. I'd love to hear more updates from him about that. And thank you to our Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. And we will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.